half of the movie price.
Now they arrest you for that because it's scalping.
Yeah.
Actually, you said the other night that he worked for the roofing company too, at some point.
Well,
In fact,
yeah.
Well, I guess I'd asked him when he left home, so that's how we got onto that.
yeah, we just skipped
Before
over
you
that.
left home, you had those other jobs.
Yeah. Dad got me a job down there at Living Long, taking 40 cents an hour.
That's what it was.
I worked in the
40 years later, you were making only twice that.
where they were making felt for roofing shingles. And felt was made from a mixture of ground up wood and paper and rags. And after it was pretty well mulched together, they would go through this series of rollers and they'd be pressed into big rolls of felt. From there on, that felt was used with gravel and tar and whatnot in the shingles. And my job was to, I forget the time length, we would take a piece out of one of these rollers, just a small piece, and put it through 2 or 3 tests to make sure that it was the right strength and all for making roofing.
Oh, you're a quality control engineer.
Yeah. No, I didn't have that too long. Then after that, that's when I went to Woolworth. Yeah.
Well, how'd you go about getting into the Army? Were they
Well,
going to draft you, and how'd you get into
We got
officer
married.
candidate school?
We got married first.
Married first.
Yeah, 1 week. And I was drafted the 21st of June of 41, and went by train to Fort Thomas, Kentucky, which is just across the river from Cincinnati. And
Big
that's-
train ride.
That's where we were inducted at that time. And wasn't there too long when I was shipped along with a bunch of other guys to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and got my basic training in field artillery, telephone communication. And in those days, you strung wire across the land, and that was it. And went on a lot of exercises doing this kind of stuff. Of course, you did a lot of marching, and you did a lot of playing around with World War I helmets and World War I '03 rifles. Some of them were wooden guns, and 75 artillery pieces. There wasn't much equipment at that time.
We weren't in the war yet, right?
No. So, at that time, they, after I finished basic, I was sent to the 36th Division, which is a Texas National Guard division. That was in Camp Bowie, Texas. And Your mother was down there with me for a while. I had that Ford coupe there. And, we were staying in Brownwood, Texas, which was close in. And it was Sunday morning. We heard about Pearl Harbor. And of course then nobody could leave the base regardless of who you were. So we got a hold of her dad and he came down and got her and they drove back to Norwood.
So you were stuck on base and she was in a place these two guys were renting?
Yeah,
You couldn't get to her and she couldn't get to you?
yeah, yeah.
So she was stuck out there a couple days? Or so Dad could get down there? Or what?
I don't remember. But anyway, we had all kinds of maneuvers and whatnot, and then they let a bunch of us go on furlough, the first furlough we had. So I went back to Ohio, and while I was gone, this division was what they call a square division. It was top heavy in manpower. They changed it to a triangular division to make it streamlined and more efficient. And all of those who were on furlough, in those days, you get a train. You were lucky if you got a place to stand up. Transportation was positively terrible. And when I saw that I was not going to be back when I was supposed to, I sent a wire to the CEO of that company I was with. He was a Captain Lassiter. Nice guy. And all this change took place while I was gone. And when I got back, I learned about it. And it was done. And come to find out, I was told that a lot of Mexicans were pushed out as surplus, plus a few Texans. But I was one of the first draftees to be put in that National Guard division. And nobody thought they were as good or better than these Texans. They were terrible. So the guys that were pushed out of the division went to San Francisco, and they got on a ship heading for the Pacific, and that ship was sunk. So St. Peter saved me that time.
They were all shipped while you were on furlough?
Yep. Yep. So when we got back, we went on maneuvers to Louisiana. That was a favorite place for maneuvers. The 36th Division plus several other divisions, and, getting ready for something. And Eisenhower was down there at that time. I never did see him. But when we left the maneuvers, we went to Camp Blanding, Florida, which was near Stark, Florida, and not too far from Jacksonville. That was a pretty nice place. The 36th and the 45th Division were there. I think the 45th was from Oklahoma. when we had finished that, North Carolina, or Florida, I don't remember how long we were there, not too long. We were sent on maneuvers in North Carolina. And that was, what's that camp where you were?
Oh, Fort Bragg?
Yeah, Fort Bragg.
That's where they were?
That's on their grounds down there. We did that. And you know, all during this period with the 36th Division, they were always looking for people to go to officer candidate school. And I applied every time and was turned down.
What was your rank at the time?
Corporal. And only the Texans could go. And these guys would go and flunk.
They can come back another idiot.
and get their same jobs back. Oh, God. So, anyway, I kept trying. But after the North Carolina maneuvers, we went through Camp Edwards, Massachusetts. And this was my training. All of our equipment and everything was loaded on trains. We went up there. And Camp Edwards was loaded. There was a room. So they put us out in the brush. And they threw straw out and mattress covers. And there you are, guys. You stuck the mattress cover with straw, and that was your bed. And we finally got some tents. And so I was still trying, not getting anywhere. So your mother wrote your uncle, who was a colonel at Edgewood Arsenal.
Her uncle.
Yeah, her uncle. Her dad's brother. And he was in charge of the chemical warfare school. And she wrote him. And the first thing you know, I got orders to report to division headquarters to the chemical section for some experience in chemical warfare. I did that for maybe 2 or 3 months.
This was still called the Texans.
Yeah. And the major that was in charge of the chemical section, Edward N. Harris, fantastic guy, and his assistant was a second lieutenant, Stephanie, that's his last name. And so we had schooling and whatnot. And then finally orders came through for me to go to OCS at Edgewood Arsenal, chemical warfare school. So that was when your mother was there, and she got a job at division Arsenal headquarters. I think she was making $18 a week. Well, when I got to school, this was 90 days. We had rented there used to be a cabin for tourists about 3 miles from the main gate out on the highway. And that's where she lived. She had the car and she could go back and forth to work. But I couldn't leave the post. I was in school. And I got through that. And I was a second lieutenant in March 1943. And I was assigned to Chemical Warfare School for non-commissioned officers. And that would be every branch of the service. And I taught school there for 2.5 years. And that was a pretty good school. There were several of us that did that, and we had a lieutenant colonel there. Garland, Garland, White. He was from Arizona. He was an old guy, but quite a guy. And there was only one, well, I'd say there might have been 2 bad things that happened. One guy, I guess he had a hand blown off with a hand grenade. I guess the thing went off quicker than it was supposed to when he pulled the pin. I don't know. And I was teaching transferring mustard gas from a ton container to a 55-gallon drum. And this is with a pipe between them. And somehow or other, this thing had worked loose. And we all had protective clothing on, gloves and outer clothes, and we had gas masks. And I grabbed this thing where it was leaking until somebody could get it shut off. And I ended up with a couple of mustard burns. One was on my wrist here, and I went clear into the bone, and one was on this thumb. And the officers' school would have me come in every now and then to a class to show them. They had some kind of ointment.
This is what happens when you mess up.
Yeah.
This is what this thing will do to you.
Some kind of an ointment that they put on this stuff. And it gradually healed up. But boy, it looked terrible to start with. Went clear into the bone.
That hurt pretty good, too.
No, it wasn't bad.
Really?
So, after 2.5 years teaching school, we taught flamethrowers and 4.2 mortars, shooting smoke, shells, and high explosive. We didn't do any gas, but we had gas obstacle courses that we ran people through. A bunch of us had put us in the officers' pool. Well, the next step was to go to the Pacific for the invasion of Japan. And that's where I was expected to go. But before I got out of that school, the colonel was moved to another job, and a major came in, Edward Vidal. He was from Florida. And short, stocky guy. And this colonel came after me, plus a couple of the other guys. They formed what they call a guard and security division, and they needed help. this was moving gas shells around the country. And the first trip I had to make was to Searsport, Maine. And it was a shipload of gas shells that were leaking. They were made in 1936. I don't understand how this happened. But they were shipped from the Aleutian Islands to Searsport, Maine. And then they were loaded on freight trains, 15 cars. And I had a crew of maybe 3 to 5 guys with me. And we had a caboose or a boxcar to live in on the trip. And we had 45s with ammunition. And every time that train stopped, we were supposed to jump out and make sure that nobody tampered with these cars. So we got to Huntsville, Alabama. And the next thing you knew, they loaded them on another ship, took them out through the Gulf, around the east coast of Florida, about 300 miles, which is supposed to be the deepest part of the ocean. And we dumped all that stuff in the ocean. You never get away with that today. Never. And that was a big shipload of that stuff that went into the ocean. They were all 2 shells to a wooden case. And when this ship got out to where it was supposed to dump all this stuff, they had their equipment all set to lift these big skids of these things. And in order to make sure that the thing was working right, they did this with cases of dry cereal. Over the side, pull the trip, and let it all go into the ocean. Oh, God. I forget how long that took to do that, but
You unload the whole ship.
oh yeah. Then as we come back in, all of this lumber that was used to hold all this stuff in place in the ship was tossed over the side into the ocean. Well, you could have built a town out of all that lumber.
Yeah.
Just thrown out.
A lot of it could have been contaminated with the chemicals, though, right?
Yeah. So I get back and I make up a report about that and send it in. And wait for another assignment. And we had another one that went out right from Edgewood out of ways, and that got dumped. This is on an Ayres tree. And they had a forklift down in the hold that would lift all this stuff up. And guys would toss it over. And we had mustard sandwiches. Oh, geez, mustard bologna. A lot of guys got sick because the ship was up and down. Then I got assigned. They asked me to stay a year longer because they needed people to take care of this kind of stuff. So I volunteered to stay. I could have gotten out a year earlier. And I was promoted to the first lieutenant. And I was taking gas shells from Crane, Indiana, which was a naval installation. How a naval installation is, what it's doing in the middle of the country, I didn't understand. But here again, it was 15 boxcars and a caboose or another freight car with cots in it, and 4 or 5 guys. And we took it out to the other side of Salt Lake City, well, and that's as far as we had to go with it. And somebody else picked it up and took this stuff out in the desert and stored it. Now, I saw this place, and I'm telling you, as far as you could see, there were airplanes, all kinds of army vehicles, all kinds of artillery, and all kinds of ammunition, just stored out there in the desert. And while we were waiting for another assignment,
And that was in Utah.
at Utah, we were free, and we could borrow a Jeep, machine guns or whatever, we could go out, borrow try to shoot jackrabbits.
What a the caliber?
Real,
back in
real
the day.
sports. Big rabbits. I never did hit one. We had a good time doing it. I don't think anybody ever got one.
It's fun to shoot guns, though.
Yeah. And so I made, I think, about 3 of those trips and written reports. And when that tour was over in my extra year, I did get out, and that was at Fort Meade in Maryland, and that was in August of 46. So I had 5 years and 2 months in the Army, and I was a captain then. And I signed up for reserve, and that was in Cincinnati. And here I was at the beginning in Norwood, and you were born then. And I bought this house in Deer Park in 47. And we lived there, and that's when I hooked on with Forever, December 1946.
That was right after you got out of the Army.
Yeah.
You went right into Wareham.
Well,
Sure, I remember.
wasn't immediate, maybe 3-4 months. Jobs were hard to come by. The war was over. There was nothing you could do about it.
But you lucked out with the Army. You spent all your time in Maryland, for the most part, after you got out of training.
In Maryland? Yeah.
You didn't have to go
Yeah.
overseas and...
No, but you know the funny, not funny, when you got discharged, there was a distance that you had to be out of the country to get extra pay. I think it was $300. And that's the same that a guy got that was overseas fighting. This is the bonus.
So you made that distance by taking a ship 300 miles into the ocean.
Yep.
Rules is rules.
Rules is rules, that's right.
Okay, we're back on tape, Jack. Ask your question again.
I forgot what the question was.
How long did the trip take?
How long did the trip take on the train from Indiana
Jack just woke up.
to Utah?
Oh, probably 2 days,
2 days.
something like that. I know we spent a lot of time in Chicago, in the railroad yards, just south of here.
With all that poison gas, boy, they'd go crazy these days, wouldn't they?
Yeah. But we'd have to be outside watching these cars so nobody tampered with them.
They have to do the same thing nowadays in Chicago. People got to make sure nobody steals stuff out of cars. Things haven't changed.
Even the empty cars.
Yeah.
Gary said that you told him that when you were back at Edgewood Arsenal, you found your old reports still on file.
Oh, yeah. Did I tell you that?
Yeah.
Well, you were telling me, last time you were down to see me, you were telling me these war stories.
I forget which year this was. This is after your mother died. That I had gone to see you.
Is that the year you went to
Your
Jersey?
mother had 2 sisters that lived in New Jersey. One of them's husband had died, and the other one, her husband died just last year. Anyway, I stopped to visit them for 2 or 3 days, and then I went to Edgewood. I thought I'd like to see that place again, and boy, I got lost. The gate that I knew was the main gate where I stood guard a lot of times. It wasn't there anymore. You went in another way. Well, you go past all these buildings and you don't know where to go to talk to somebody. So I just picked one and went in and talked to them, told them who I was and whatnot. And they said, well, go to building so-and-so. So I do that, and I ran into this guy, told him who I was, and I said that I'd been there 50 years ago. Oh my God! He couldn't believe it.
Was this a young guy or like a kid in his 20s or something?
No, he might have been in his 30s.
Young guy.
Yeah.
He's still a kid.
And he went around telling everybody, hey, here's a guy who was here 50 years ago. And I was looking for possible records of people that, other officers that I knew, and maybe if they had information on whatever happened to them. They didn't have anything like that. And I told him what I did there. And then I told him before I got out that I was transporting poison gas shells. And I said I had reports that I'd sent in to headquarters every time I made a trip. Oh, I think I've seen some of that stuff. And so he went to a couple of file cabinets. Hey, here's some papers with your name on them.
Still an open file. There's waiting for them.
Yeah. Well, I saw a couple of them. I said, yeah, that's me. He couldn't get over that. And I told him I was going to try to locate some stuff in my files that I'd send me, but I didn't get a chance to do it. I'm sure he's not there anymore. But that was quite an experience. And I finally saw the old headquarters that I was familiar with and where you were born. And I went by the area where Uncle Milt lived.
So he was still there when you were there too?
Yeah.
He was in charge of the whole place the whole time you were there?
For school. Just for school. that was that. And I didn't stay in reserves very long because I had to get a job. And I had to quit playing soldier, so I think I finally got out of it when I would move to Connecticut. I wrote them and told them that I could no longer do that.
Before you moved to Connecticut, we were in Deer Park. How'd you hook up with wherever?
And the paper. They were looking
For a job.
people to sell cooking utensils to directly to the consumer, parties and stuff. So,
You still got those big suitcases of
you know, I got a couple of them. And some bags that we used to have the pans in, you know, so you wouldn't get all beat up.
That's what you keep your shoes in now.
Yeah.
Waste nothing.
And what?
Waste nothing.
Hey, those are good bags.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what, did wherever transfer you to Connecticut? Or did
Yep.
you just,
Yep.
they transferred you but you had to pay, or did they pay for it?
I started out as an independent contractor, having parties for people to sell them cooking utensils. After a while, we didn't even have a sample. And we just show pictures and tell them what these pans can do and maybe how quick we could get them. And I did pretty good with that because I'd get some girl that was going to get married, and this is something that she needed, and she could buy it on a monthly payment plan, and if she gave me referrals of any of her friends that were getting married, if I sell them something, she would get a little bonus pan. And I remember one time I hooked up with some girls that worked for the phone company. I sold quite a few of them, said wherever. You know, I still got some of that stuff. And I think, I'm not sure, but I think some of you have.
Not me. I didn't get any.
Well, anyway,
I still got that big pot.
yeah. I gave Edie a set. I gave Charlie a lid. My mother a set. No, I didn't give her one. She was gone. With that good stuff, I showed a lot of people how to cook without water. So that was long before Teflon and all that stuff. Long before. So I did that in Ohio. And then I asked them to transfer me to retail stores. And I got that pretty quick. And the guy that was the head of this group that sold house to house, he died, I guess it's about 2 years ago now. I kept in touch with him. I don't know what the world ever happened to him. I guess he might have had some Alzheimer's. So, got in retail stores, and then I was traveling over Ohio and Kentucky, calling on wholesale distributors of housewares, and going out with one of their salespeople and helping them sell wherever. And I did that for a few months. Then I got this job to go to Connecticut and have my own accounts. So I had Connecticut and Vermont and part of New Hampshire and part of Massachusetts up to Worcester. Boston was done by another guy. And I was there for 9.5 years. Well, you guys were too. That's where you were born.
I wasn't there the whole 9.5.
No.
Thank God.
That was the good old days,
Good old days.
before 52. Yeah.
And
BG.
I managed to buy this house. Your mother didn't even see it. I bought it, and I liked the location and everything, because I thought it'd be a good place for you guys to grow up. And it was close to town. This was 13 miles out of Hartford. A big part of my business was Hartford, New Haven, Worcester, Mass. Vermont was a nice place to go in early spring and late fall to see the scenery. There wasn't much up there.
Didn't take much money.
No.
How much did you pay for that house?
$12,250.
A lot of money in those days, though,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
and sold it for 18.5. Didn't make a lot, but
Why?
we finished the upstairs and put in another bath and all of that. But we had, I think, pretty good life there.
How much land was with that house?
Well, it was supposed to be about 3/4 of an acre.
Yeah, to us, as little kids, it seemed like a big piece of land.
Yeah, a lot of it was down the hill.
Down the hill.
Yeah. Not much grass though. A lot of sand.
A lot of sand.
Yeah.
I stopped there in about 1985 and talked to the people living there, and they just bought the house for $250,000.
Should have held on to it.
Yeah.
You
Should have rented it out.
Isn't that something?
Remember that house? I remember there wasn't much grass, but there was a lot of leaves. We used to rake the leaves over the edge of that hill, and they had that huge pile of leaves where we kept raking them every year. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Remember that tree house we had?
Mm-hmm.
How the
Yeah.
hell did we live through that? Why did you let us go in that thing? To us, it seemed like it was way, way up there. I guess it wasn't really that high.
Seemed even higher to me. I remember I had one. It was just a
Yeah, we gave you a
ledge.
baby one.
Yeah.
We used to ride our sleds down that hill, weaving around the trees. And then you get to the bottom and you'd fly across the frozen brook. You know?
Then you'd have to get back up the hill. How did we do that?
I don't know, but we should both be dead. I don't know how we did that. Man, oh man.
Yeah.
Did you do that on the runner sled or on the saucers?
Both.
I remember sitting at the top of that hill one time, you and I, and it was just like slick. They got a coat of ice on top of the snow, and we were sitting up there doing something, and we, at the same time, I think, we just ended up stood off. Unintentionally, on our butts, down that hill.
On your butts?
On our butts, right towards the water. And I don't know how you stopped, but I remember running into a tree to stop myself. I don't know how I shifted to get over there, but we would have just gone flying right into it. And I don't have any clue how we got back up that hill, because it was just slicker than snot.
Those saucer sleds are under my stair.
Those are antiques.
Antiques. They're wood. Weren't they made out of wood?
If you'd like, I could dig one out and you could put it in your front yard with the snow blower.
Aluminium.
The snow blower.
Remember